Two, one, JP, fellow Greenville native, man. What's up? How you doing?
What's up, man? Hey, I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on.
It's
Number one
crazy.
podcast in Greenville.
Hey, let's go, man.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
it's kind of crazy that we got all these connections from Greenville. You're dating my old neighbor's younger sister. You've been moving around. You play a bunch of sports. You went to South Carolina, but man, we're just now getting to know each other.
Dude, it's a common theme. The world is so much smaller than people think.
It is, man. It sure is. And growing up in Greenville, what area of Greenville did you grow up in?
I grew up right off Pelham Road in Foxcroft. So off Pelham Road on one side, off Devonshire Road on the other.
With when you were growing up, I mean, you do a lot of, I guess, what do you call it? Video editing right now, video creation.
Yeah, just kind of like content creation. No, dude, I didn't do any of it growing up. Like I was always
What kind of kid were
creative.
you?
I was always creative, but I was more like easygoing, kind of not like class clown level because I was a little bit afraid to get in trouble because the
I
discipline
was
at
like
the
that too.
yeah, like the discipline at home made you just fearful enough not to become the class clown. So I'm like, all right, like I know my lane. I'm gonna be on all the teachers' good sides and I'm gonna still be funny, but tastefully.
Very
And
cool.
but yeah, I mean, I was just that kid, and then the kid that played all the different sports. So when you're young, if you're semi-athletic, it makes it easier to make friends.
Oh man, I tell people all the time, like I didn't go to school for grades. I went to school to play sports, man. Like that was the what got me to get up and go to school every day.
You were Cardell Jones before Cardell Jones,
You like that? Uh, so through high school, what was your main sport?
dude. So I played football, basketball, and soccer. My
No
freshman
tennis?
year. No tennis. I never. I if anybody's listening that follows me on social media, you would think I grew up playing tennis. I've never played a sanctioned tennis match in my life. I never had a tennis lesson. I'm just into the sport, but I got into it later on, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I played football, basketball, and soccer for the high school my freshman year, and then just football and soccer sophomore, junior, senior year. But church basketball in
The
Greenville is
best, yeah.
it could be considered a high school sport. And I am a two division champion
There you go.
in
You're
church ball.
Me and your boy Rick Furman used to dominate the church leagues back in the day.
Which team are y'all on?
First Prez.
Oh yeah, we're mopping first pres, man.
Man, we might have to get them up and get a game together. So you aren't into video editing at this time, like you haven't really gotten into it. When did you start developing that creativity with yourself?
Yeah, so I was a broadcast journalism major at shout out the Gamecocks, University of
Cool.
South Carolina. And that's when I like because I wasn't good at math, I wasn't good at science, I wasn't interested in either of those things either. And I was like, I want to do something in sports. And it was either sport management or broadcast journalism. And, being on TV sounded more fun than whatever sport management meant when you were 17 years old. So I got into it, uh, became a journalism major. It was classic. Like, like, oh, when you're growing up, other like parents, are like, oh, you should be a sports broadcaster.
Yep.
Like, I could see you there on the sideline. And you're like, yeah, maybe I can. And then you get down into the program and it's like pretty boring and they just kind of teaching you like cable news stuff.
Hmm.
But it triggered my that's when I like first started making videos. And so it like triggered like, oh, I could make funny stories. I could be creative. I could make a dumb story about my roommate, like, create a dramatic feature film about my roommate who's doing nothing. And so that's when like it kind of sparked was when I was in broadcast journalism. The program didn't really do much, but it put a camera in my hand. So I thank them for that. But I have my qualms with college.
Sure. With video editing, to me it's still almost like intimidating for me. Was it ever
Yeah,
intimidating for you, like figuring out how to do it?
dude, definitely. I mean, you know how it is. You open up Adobe Premiere and you're like, oh my, it looks like a different language. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, there there is no way I'm ever gonna become experienced or like, you know, I'm never gonna become good enough at this to provide value to somebody. And so yeah, it's super daunting. And but just like everything, you watch a couple YouTube videos, enroll
Mhm.
in YouTube University, and you figure it out. And it gets, now you look at it and it's like, oh, this is Premiere is easy, but you get to After Effects and everything, it's still there's still some Chinese out there you can't really understand.
Did you get in, or you told me earlier you got into the athletic department a little bit at South Carolina?
Yeah, I was working like as a SID assistant, and because one of like the assistant athletic director, Steve Fink, who you might know, he
Mhm.
was there when you were there, but he worked mainly with football. He came and spoke to one of our classes, and I was like, oh, this seems like a good like spot for me to get involved in if possible. Because also at the time, the creative media industry still hadn't even like taken off.
Yeah.
Justin King wasn't at South
He's the
Carolina.
man, yeah.
Dude, he's the man. And universities hadn't started hiring creative teams. So really, we didn't even know too much about that industry at all.
What is this,
So I,
like 2016 or so?
yeah, to that, they brought Justin King in 2000 and either 16 or 17 because I reached out to try to join that team, but they were just taking younger students to build the culture.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I got in with the SID, saw like the back end of all of the athletic department things, and like how the press conferences are run. I was got to do some more writing feature stories on athletes, sitting down with them, um, and which I really enjoyed. And this storytelling, that like my love for storytelling picked up in college for sure with that job. Um, but yeah, that was like the SID stuff. Again, though, it was still like a little bit too boring for my
Mhm.
taste. Like I was never gonna go be an SID.
Yeah. With it seems like you're kind of unique that you had this direction or path pretty early on in college, and it looks like you've kind of acted out on it for through your early part of your career, at least.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's tough because I had the direction, but I didn't know lick about podcasting, which is what I do now. And I didn't get into podcasting until I had this job. I just saw the things that were popping off and I happened to be interested in those things. And then I took it upon myself to learn it. And you might enjoy this. Like you remember Corey Boyd?
Yeah.
So he was like the first athlete that I started working with. And that
Cool. A
was,
legend, man.
dude, like my favorite player ever. And so that was like crazy. I'm a senior in high school and he's living in Columbia. And I just reached out to him on Facebook. Like my brother had just gave me a camera. I'm like, hey, Corey, like my name's JP. I'm a massive fan. I saw you're doing your stuff out here. Like, would love to come make you a video to promote your youth football camp or whatever it was. He responds back like, oh man, um, like, yeah, we'd love to have you out. Like, here's my number. Shoot me a text. I'm
Dang.
immediately telling my childhood friends, like, yo, Corey Boy, dude, I got his number, dude. We're texting. And so I started going and like that's when I started to make like highlight reels. When I go
Mhm.
back and watch them now, I'm like, yo, you really thought you were doing something with these videos and they're horrible. um, but like I got to know Corey's story and then I took it upon myself. I'm like, I'm gonna make a documentary. I don't have any equipment other than like a Nikon camera. And this was like I just graduated. When I just graduated when I wanted to do the documentary. So I go to the university. I just spent 4 years there. We paid all this money for. I'm like, hey, I want to do the story on a South Carolina guy. And I'm an optimistic person. In my head, I'm passionate about the story, and I'm also
I'm
thinking,
in.
this is it. Like I produced this. ESPN's picking it up. This is a 30 for 30. I'm good. And I try to get the cameras. They're like, sorry, we don't give out the equipment to people that aren't students. I'm
Dang.
like, man, I'm like 1 week out of graduation. Hit up a couple of teachers to ask, and they're like, sorry, man, there's nothing we can do about it. And that like pissed me off a little bit. Like, cause I like took time to build relationships with teachers, and then they go and do me like that. And I'm like, man, like, screw this. And it kind of like put a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like,
Sure.
all right, I'm gonna still make the documentary and I'm gonna still be on 30 for 30. And I like make the documentary. Like my mic, some of the mics aren't working in some of the scenes. I don't know like enough about B-roll and like what other interviews to get. And it like, it's not something I would submit for any awards. Um, but
Where
yeah,
can I
like
watch it?
it's on YouTube.
All right.
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
And it's cool because like you're always your own biggest critic. So, like still it'll get put in some Gamecock message boards. They're like, you guys should check out Corey's story because a lot of people
Nice.
don't know about it.
Well, props to you. I don't know about it. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, it is insane. Like that guy has lost every single person close to him, either via gun violence or like I think his grandma got sick and died. And like Kenny McKinley was his best friend,
Dang.
suicide.
Love Kenny.
Like that man, Corey has went through the most things in the world, and still like his number one goal is just to like provide a light in kids' lives. And I'm like, dude, this guy deserves the world. And like, I can't
For
believe
real.
nobody has done a story on this dude. And so I love Corey Boyd. Like, I can't say enough good things about him. First athlete I ever worked with, for one of the first players I was ever a fan of. And a lot of credit to him for making some gears turn in my brain.
Well, dude, as you continue to climb the ladder, you gotta eventually turn another documentary in for Corey Boyd.
Dude, trust me, it's in the. I would still love to do his and just redo it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
Um,
you gotta just like redo it, magnify it, blow it up.
yeah, and it's everything gets way easier when you kind of like advance in your space, and people are more willing to talk to you if once you have a little more credibility. So, yeah,
What
I definitely.
took you down to what was it, Dallas and then to Florida?
Yeah, so I was looking for a job out of college because the documentary didn't land me my job.
You weren't on 30
And
for 30 yet.
so I went like my two biggest passions are kids, working with kids, and like sports.
Yeah,
And so like I was a swim coach in my neighborhood in Foxcroft, won the Blue Division champion for the first time in
there you
I think
go.
35 years. So um and went to go work at a summer camp called Camp Ozark in Arkansas because I didn't have any. I'm like, I might as well go work at this camp, get a little money. And also at this camp, a lot of uh kids come from like very wealthy families, and they're like based in Texas. And in my list, I always wanted to move to either Texas, Florida, or California for a little bit just to experience it. In Texas, these kids are all from Texas. I'm like, you never know who you might meet at one of these places. I heard Kevin Sumlin's kids went to this camp. Like it seems like it'll be a good time. And it's like a Christian based camp with an emphasis on sports. So I go out there, have a blast with these kids. And prior to me leaving, I had applied for an internship with the Northern Texas PGA in Dallas. And I get a call when I'm at camp. I wasn't supposed to have my phone. They gave me an exemption, like, hey, we understand your situation. You can have your phone. The lady calls me Molly Rollins. She calls me. She's like, oh, we want to offer you the position. Like, do you accept? I'm like, yeah, I accept. Thank you so much. Can't wait to get started. Can't wait to come to Dallas. The, like, this starts in like 3 weeks, and I still got 2 weeks left in Arkansas. Don't have a place to live. They're paying me like $1,000 a month for the internship. Dallas is an expensive city. So I get off the phone and I go to the kids in the room, like, hey, your boy's moving to Dallas because half of them are from Dallas. I'm like, any of y'all have a guest house I could stay in? They're all hype at the moment, like, yeah, dude, you can stay with me. We don't have a guest house, but you can stay. I'm like, I mean, I don't know about that. But, and one kid was like, I do have a guest house. When I go home from camp, I'll talk to my parents and maybe you can stay. I'm like, all right, his name's Joe Giles. I'm like, dude, let me know. They leave. We still have one more week left at camp. And he calls me. He's like, yo, what are you up to? I'm like, oh, I'm just like leaving Arkansas. He's like, my parents said you could stay with me. I'm like, well, let me talk to them because I don't know if I believe you. And so he puts me on the phone with his parents. They're like, yeah, we'd love to have you. Like, Joe had the great time at camp. Like, it would be awesome. Like, we'd love to help you out any way we can. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Look
yeah,
at
this
that,
is
man.
yeah, like amazing. Look at God, right? And they live like right down the street from SMU, which is prime location in Dallas. So I go down there, do that internship, was able to still work on my videography and things like that, but it wasn't as like probably forward thinking as I would have liked.
Mhm,
But I mean, invaluable experience moving to a big city
mhm.
just for my own personal confidence because I
Yeah,
moved
personal
there.
development.
Exactly. I can't recommend enough people moving away like
Mhm.
after school if you can, or if you have any inkling. Some people don't want to, and that's fine. But I was there and I had my moment of where I have no friends. I don't know anybody in Dallas except for 20 middle school kids that I was just
Yeah, your
camp counselor
boys.
for. And I remember walking into the city one time thinking like, dude, what in the world were you thinking? Like, you don't have any friends. I'm on Snapchat. My friends are in Greenville all hanging out, at Yeehaw's just being built, gathers happening. I'm like, I'm missing out, man. And ultimately I find my way, make some friends, and it was like the 6, 7 months in Dallas is like one of the most fun times of
Mhm.
my life. Um,
But
but
at one
yeah,
point you say the PGA, the stuff that just wasn't your speed, wasn't your thing.
no, like I felt like I had some ideas that weren't like well received, and they were just kind of like, hey, I think we should be doing some more fun things with the kids. Like it was a lot of junior golf. Like, we like let's let them wear jerseys to a tournament one time. Like, any little thing to spice it up. Like, let me ask them these dumb questions. Like, oh yeah, I don't know how the club would feel about that.
Sure.
I can't be doing this with golf, man.
What people
And
think about golf is sometimes true.
right. And they add something like in one of the interviews for a full-time position, they asked me like, where do you see yourself in like 5 to 7 years? And I'm like still 22 years old, don't really know, and basically said that like, I'm not sure what, like, hopefully something in sports where I'm still growing and learning.
Yeah,
And they're
very
like, so you,
honest answer.
yeah, and they're like, so you don't see yourself like, with the NTPGA? I'm like, what? Like, I mean, no, no, not really. I was like, if the opportunity's right, sure. And then I didn't get the call back. But I like all those people out there. That's like no shade to them.
Hey, dude, but if that door like slowly closed, man, something else open in Florida.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, like I still wasn't exactly sure what I was gonna do. Like now, all like the Justin King social media video teams were
Hmm.
created, and like I definitely want to get involved. Looked around at like smaller colleges that I thought maybe with my resume I could get into. Then another kid that I swim coach in my neighborhood, that Connor Miller, his family, the mom's brother was IMG's lawyer. And we all know about IMG. If you're
Hmm.
sports fans, like has all these either the best athletes in the world or the richest kids in the world. And she like made a call to him, like, hey, one of our friends in the neighborhood just finished internship in Dallas. Like he's looking at IMG. Could he come down and maybe you could just show him around and introduce him to people? So I go down to Bradenton with John Dooley, and he shows me around, introduces me to like the marketing team, the social media team. And at the time, like they're all full, they're not looking for people. And he introduced me to their campus life team, which is basically like your RA at college.
Hmm.
And they were like, oh man, we'd love to have you. Like you're camp counselor, swim coach, like you're the right fit. Put in the application. And I'm hype. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Like we're gonna get this job. And like I take the job and I moved down there in March 2019 and start working with the kids. I'm like a float, so I'm working throughout the whole dorm in the beginning, all with the end goal in mind of like I need to get on the social media team.
Hmm.
So I had upgraded my camera from Dallas, and I started, making some videos for the kids and taking some pictures and learning how to continuing to learn how to edit videos, started learning how to edit photos. And, like their parents love that kind of stuff too. Like I said, I love kids. So kids, like seeing a kid when they get a video of themselves or just like any photo, and even at the time when I'm not that good, and them like light up, and it's just like it makes you feel good about what
Of
you're
course.
doing,
Yeah.
which is another, which I learned was another thing. Like, oh man, that's like a really cool part about content creation.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
good feeling.
um, and then that's when I started. I guess Corey Boyd was the first pro athlete. The next one would be Dennis Shapovalov, who is a tennis player.
Hmm.
And all the middle school kids are freaking out when he's on campus. They're like, dude, Dennis Shapovalov is here. I have no idea who he is. They're like, you got to go make a video of him. It'll be sick. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll go out there and I'll ask him. And go out there. I'm taking photos and videos because I got out there like mid practice. And then he comes over to me and he's like, hey, dude, could you send me like any of that content that you were doing? Like I never have any content from like practice or really anything. I'm like, yeah, for sure. What's the best way to get it to you? He's like, oh, you can just text it to me. I'm like, all right, dope. Like, just put your number in. Puts his number in. Nicest guy in the world. I go back to the dorms. Kids are like waiting at the front desk. They're like, "Do you talk to Dennis? Are you serious? What was that like? Is he cool?" I'm like, "Yeah, he was nice. Like he's the man." They're like, "Man, that's awesome." So I'm like, "Let me Google this man." And I look him up, and the first thing is like at the time he was 19, ranked like number 16 in the world. And the article is like 17-year-old Denis Shapovalov shocks Rafael Nadal at Montreal Open. I'm like, oh, oh snap! Like this
My
dude is,
favorite tennis player, Nadal.
yeah. So Nadal put Dennis on the map, and but in my head, it immediately like a switch flipped. I'm like, dude, if this guy is top 20 in the world, young too, and doesn't have any content, like what does that mean for everyone else? And tennis is like a lucrative sport when it comes to sponsors and
Hmm.
sponsorships.
Big time.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, I need to dive into this tennis stuff. Started working with more and more players. Just was able to, you know, get a better feel for like what the sport might need. They didn't have any of these cool highlight videos that were going on in other sports, just lack of coverage. Um, so I ended up getting in trouble with HR, or like some agent snitched on me, like doing these videos and like doing something for Dennis. I'm like,
What was the
wait,
problem with it?
they thought I was running this like other business and like making all this cash. I'm like, you guys pay me $35,000 a year, first of all. So even if I am making cash, you shouldn't even care.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. I wasn't making cash. I don't even know anything about running a business or what to charge. And so they were like, yeah, like this is a conflict of interest, all these things. And in my head, I'm just helping IMG. Like,
Yeah. You're like,
give,
man, I'm just providing value here.
dude, like I give him the video. He posts the video. He has 300,000 followers, whatever it is, and he posts it. What's in the background on all the branding, like IMG? I'm like, I'm surprised you guys don't have somebody out here, anyways. And so it becomes this whole thing. They're like, you can't come back out here. Like, no more videos, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm like scared for a second. And then after I'm done being scared, I'm mad. Like, this is not right. Like, I love these kids, but I didn't come here just to like be RM this whole
Mhm.
time. And I like stay in touch with Dennis, keep doing stuff for kids, keep going to bat for myself. Like, hey, I'm just sending this content to these kids. It says this in my job description to be in contact with parents and all of that. And like, I'm enhancing the experience. And it just still like I had to jump through all these hoops and hurdles. The social media team would ask me to do some stuff, and they like had a great squad over there, very nice people, but you could tell they were having to navigate around whatever issues the agent had with me.
Yep.
And but I
Agents,
still,
dude.
agents, man, and I stay in touch with Dennis to this day. Like, we still I'll still go down to Florida, do content with him. And he told me, I told him the whole story like last time I was with him. He was like, dude, I thought IMG, like, he's like, I wasn't even signed with IMG at that time. And I thought they sent you out there to do that stuff for me, like, as a part of like, hey, you should sign with us. You know, it wasn't one of the reasons he signed, but he's like, oh,
Hmm.
this is cool. Like, no other group is sending out like a content person.
Yeah, like a media individual.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, it's like what could have been there. And a lot of tennis coaches were great to me there, but
Do you know if they have like, dude, they have that going on now?
they have more of it
They
going on,
probably
but
hire. They're
not.
like, man, JP's gone. We got to hire somebody to do that.
Yeah, right. No more free work. They have stuff, and like they're way like there's other RMs that are kind of, they're not following my path. They're not like into podcasting or whatever, but it's way more easy for these people to like do these things for the kids now.
Yep.
Um, which is cool. But yeah, the tennis stuff, and like I started messaging with Dennis's agent on my favorite social media app of all time, LinkedIn.
Nice.
And I'm like telling him my ideas and stuff because I'm getting ready to like make a move from IMG. Like, dude, like I think there's these, you know, great opportunities in tennis if they just get some more cameras on them and coverage and all these things. And his name's Max Eisenbud. He's like, he was Maria Sharapova's agent, like top
Nice.
dog. And since I was, at the time I was on the LinkedIn premium free trial, so my message went up to the top of his inbox, and he saw it and replied, was like, I love everything you're saying. I've been thinking about these things. Let's hop on the phone. I'm like, oh snap. It was another like ESPN 30
I'm
for
gonna
30
make it.
moment. Like, this is it, man. It's a wrap. I'll shot. Screw you, IMG. I'm going to Australian Open next year. And he's talking, everything's good. And then like COVID hits, and you know, like we get in touch one more time. He's like, my vision is to have you at all of the Grand Slam tournaments, and then have you go to like, in tennis, the Master 1000 tournaments are
Yep.
like right below Grand Slams. He's like, I want you to go to some of those with like our top clients, and you do your thing. Like, perfect, man.
Perfect.
You just tell me when. Like, I'm ready. I will move wherever. Obviously, I'll stay in Florida. Like, that's where most stuff's happening. And then like tennis shuts down. Max and I lose contact. Like, he kind of like, he stopped responding, and I don't ever knock him. Like, I have no bad feelings towards him. The guy is like one of the busiest agents in the world.
Sure.
Um, you know, but ultimately we fall out of contact, and I'm like pretty fed up with IMG. I feel like they weren't treating the kids fairly, and like there's not enough supervision. Like, I was in charge of 55 or 60 middle school kids, like
Dang.
basically their dad. And it was like taking a mental toll on me. So I decided to leave.
Was
And
this when
then,
you started to pursue UFC?
yeah, well, I was still pursuing tennis.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but this is like kind of where Bussin' With The Boys, without me knowing, the web was starting to be formed.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I left IMG, and I just like stayed in Sarasota for an extra month and a half, maybe 2 months. I can't really remember. But I'm like, I still had a couple of tennis coaches that left IMG, and they were like, oh, we'll pay you to come do stuff. And then there, Matt Jones, who used to play running back for Florida and then the Redskins, one of my friends, Alex Beeson, you actually might know him.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, he's like a year younger than you, maybe, but he's from Greenville. He's a big Florida fan. He sent me Matt Jones' Instagram story, and he just got cut by the Redskins, the Washington Commanders, and they were the Redskins. So I'll probably keep saying Redskins. And
Go for it.
he put up on a story like, oh, I'm looking for a videographer to get some tape to send to coaches, whatever, whatever. If you know one, tell him to like hit me. Alex is like, dude, you should hit him up. Like, yeah, I'll hit him up. He's probably not gonna see it, but I'll hit him up.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
uh, so I go up there, start filming videos for him, making just like a tiny bit of cash. And Steven Garcia, he like trains with them and would throw with them. So I like
Nice.
built a little relationship with him, which was another cool like grow up South Carolina
Yeah.
fan.
We were in the same class. That's my guy.
Dude, that's dope. And yeah, we still like we text to this day, and he's come on some busing stuff. Um, so that was cool. And I didn't know it, but Matt played with Will at Washington.
Ah, Will Compton.
Yeah, Will Compton. And so I did that stuff with Matt for like a month and a half. And then I was like, all right, I got to get out of this coast of Florida. Like it's just not enough's popping off. And it's
Hmm.
a ton of retired people too. Like trying to
That's how
make some
Florida is,
friends
dude.
somewhere. Dude, everywhere.
My wife's from South Florida, and we love it. We go down there all the time. But she grew
Where
up in Boca Raton.
Yeah, that's where I moved to.
Oh, nice.
Dude, yeah. So my aunt and uncle lived in Weston.
Okay.
So I moved in with them for a little bit. And then yeah, like there's a lot of tennis academies over there.
Hmm.
And so I was just trying, knocking on those doors, trying to I at the time created a little brochure pamphlet thing of my
Yeah, a little niche
packages.
for you too.
Yeah, exactly. And dude, for the life of me, like I was struggling so hard getting anybody to buy in.
Especially
And
this
I
was also in the middle of COVID too, but I guess Florida was good for you.
Yeah, Florida was still open, and I just could not understand like why is like everybody saying no? Like I'm not charging a lot. I know this is valuable, but like the sport is just behind. And I was trying to look at it objectively, like, hey, make sure you're not doing something.
Hmm.
Like I'm not naive to it. Um, but it wasn't working. So I'm like, crap, man. Like I'm starting to run out of my IMG money. I don't want to live with my aunt and uncle anymore. So I go back to Greenville for Christmas break or whatever. And MMA is big in South Florida. And Wonder Boy, Stephen Wonder Boy Thompson, who you've had
Yeah.
on your podcast,
Yeah. Good dude.
great guy. We got put in touch with him. My dad's friends, like my dad's friends had Steven's sister babysit for them.
Okay.
So he reached out to her. She put me in touch with Tony. Tony put me in touch with Steven. Like, hey guys, I live in South Florida. This is what I'm trying to do. It would help me more than you know if I could come and make some videos for Steven. And they were like, oh, dude, for sure. And you know how they are. Like, come on,
Nicest
we'd love
people
to
in the
have you.
world.
Nicest people in the world. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm a big UFC fan too. I pull up to the gym, nervous as crap because it's my first time meeting him.
Yep.
Definitely like the most famous person I had met at the time.
Hmm.
And and he's a UFC fighter. Like you can hear all the stories you want about how nice he is, but once you're in there, you're like, this dude, I've watched this guy knock
He'll
people
kill
out.
somebody quick.
And he immediately comes over disarming, like, dude, JP, so good to meet you.
Yep.
Gives you all of it. I'm like, this is gonna be good. His dad, on the other hand, is probably the
Ooh.
most intimidating person
Yeah, I
of all
wouldn't.
time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy. Um, and so I go and make their videos, post it on my page, get some love on there, go back to South Florida and start knocking on the gym's doors. I go to American Top Team where like Masvidal and Dustin Poirier train, and they were like being pretty strict with COVID. So it was like legit. I go in, knock on the door, and some dude opens the door, like cracks it open. He's like, "What do you need?" I'm like, "Oh
Masvidal is a
God,
wild man too.
yeah, no." Like if there's one place I'm gonna get punched, it's this place. And I was like, oh, trying to give like a 30-second elevator pitch. He's like, let me go talk and see if anybody see what the manager thinks. Shuts the door, comes back like 45 seconds later, does not talk to anybody. Yeah, we're not interested. Sorry. And then shuts the door. And I didn't even come in like asking, hey, can I make a video for Masvidal? I'm like, can I just make a video for any fighter coming up? They don't got to be in the UFC. So then I'm like, screw these guys. I'm going to the Black Zillions, who is American Top Team's rival. I'm gonna go to their gym and see what they got. And so I like plug in, like where do the Black Zillions train? And it pulls me this address, and I show up, and it's basically like a sports club in Greenville, but like more run down. I'm like, oh crap. I walk in, there's just a normal gym front desk. I'm like, I'm looking for the Black Zillions. They're like, oh. Black Zillions. I was like, like MMA, like jujitsu training, all that. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Towards the back. Like walk down, lights are like flickering on and off. Everything's getting more and more run down the further back I go. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Walk into this place. It's this tiny little room, but on the wall is like Kamara Usman, Rashad
Nice.
Evans. I'm like, oh, maybe this is it.
Hmm.
And I talked with this guy, Daniel Mendez, who was like the Muay Thai coach, told him what I was looking for. He's like, oh, yeah, the Black Zillions aren't here anymore. Some of them like still train, like come with me for private stuff, but like we would love to have you and like offer your services to our people. So like, give me your card and whatever. And I ended up doing some work for them, which was cool. He's like, but this is where you need to go if you're looking for with what's now Killcliff FC.
Got it.
So I go there and I walk in, tell the front desk to spiel. It's a gym. Mike Barwis, who is like a pretty renowned, I guess, like strength and conditioning coach, was at Michigan, had his own TV show for a little bit. I go in there, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for like the MMA practices. Like I'm a videographer. I'm trying to talk to the athletes about some stuff. They're like, honestly, they just started training here. Like ask Ray back here. And Ray was Ray was the smoothie guy in my head. He was working at the smoothie stand. I go over to Ray. I'm like, yo, this is what I'm doing. Like any advice? He's like, oh, dude, that's awesome. Like showed him some work. He's like, Wonder Boy?
Hell
Like,
yeah.
hey, yeah, man, that's my guy. And he's like, dude, that's dope. He's like, they train at 5 o'clock, like 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. You should like come back at 5 and I'll introduce you to everybody. And Ray, like, he's not just a smoothie guy. He owns like the business that's Grit Fit Cafe, and he's like a successful entrepreneur dude. But he was working behind there, so I'm like,
Sure, you didn't know.
yeah. So I come back later. I'm sitting there talking with him. He's like one of my good friends to this day. And the guys start coming in, and he's like, hey, y'all gotta meet my boy JP. He's a videographer, like one of the best videographers, man. Like, this is my guy. You would have thought Ray and I were best friends. And everyone is hype on it. They're like, oh, good to meet you, bro. Like, happy you're here. And then finally, this dude, Dustin Lampros, his nickname Scrappy, he was on the Ultimate Fighter TV show like
Cool.
2 seasons ago. So before Ultimate Fighter happened after I met him, but he was like, yeah, dude, you can come in with me for sure. And like film some of my stuff. And so I become like really good friends with Scrappy, and he's introducing me to all these UFC guys. And so like I'm starting to pick up some steam. And I also find out Michael Chandler trains at this gym,
Nice.
which is the next little dot in the Bussin' with the Boys web.
Cool.
Now
All right.
I didn't say anything to Michael Chandler because I was scared.
Sure.
It, and but like things started picking up, and USA Boxing reached out. Brian Taylor, he was like, hey, I've been seeing your stuff in the MMA world. Could really use you with boxing. Could fly you out for tournaments, give you this stipend, whatever, whatever. I'm like, awesome. Like this is unreal. And I'm trying to think. I got to, yeah, like the resume is slowly stacking up.
Yeah, dude, you're doing a lot of stuff. Your grind is there.
Yeah. And I'm still like, I'm working with the FAU tennis program and like getting in with these guys, just literally saying hey to everyone and like responding to everybody, shaking hands with everybody. Get Once I got numb to like being told no is when things started to pick up.
Yeah, dude. No is a good thing to hear sometimes.
Dude, yeah, great thing to hear. And then the UFC had a job opening, and like all the guys, like the fighters who I become friends with, which was really cool. They're like, dude, we saw there's an opening at UFC. Like, you should definitely apply. We'll reach out to the people we know there and like put in a good word for you. I'm like, this is crazy. I love the UFC. MMA fighters are like willing to stick their neck out for me. Yeah, like I'd really appreciate that. And then this at the same time, the same dude that showed me Matt Jones' Instagram story, Alex Beeson, sends me Will Compton's Instagram story. He's like, dude, this podcast is looking for a videographer. You should like swipe up. Will's like, what's up, boys? We're looking for another videographer. Like, if you know any of your boys that could be one of the boys, tell them to swipe up to become one of the boys. I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, I'll apply, but like my resume still doesn't look, like proper. So like I'm probably not gonna get it, but I'll apply, whatever. And wasn't thinking too much of it. Worst case scenario, I stay in South Florida, keep building my stuff because I had
Mhm,
like just got to the point where I was breaking even. Like was able to pay my rent, all my
mhm.
stuff. I was feeling good about myself, even though I wasn't like
Sure.
pocketing money. It just does a lot for your confidence. Um,
And you're still young, man.
yeah, which yeah, I like have to keep in perspective sometimes because it feels like just so much has happened. Um, but yeah, another small detail with the American Top Team stuff. I ended up living with a guy. Scrappy introduced me to this guy, Juan Puerta, who trained
Nice.
at American Top Team, and I lived with him
Very
for like the
cool.
rest of my time in Florida.
Did you ever get in the ring?
I mean, not like actually in the ring, but I went in there one time and like was screwing around, and the guy hit me with like I'll stand up for you. He like this is how he knocked somebody out in one of his fights. And I just didn't even know. He hit me with like a throw the jab cross here, so my head comes down, falls it up with the leg kick, and like misses me intentionally. I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
out of
you're
here.
about to get killed.
I'm out of here. And this dude is like, 5'7", 140,
Dang.
just about to piece me.
Those boys, man, they're weapons. They're legit weapons.
They're weapons, bro. And they're just such good people to be around because, like, I think a lot of times in our head, we think they're like crazy and you got to
Yeah.
have a loose screw. And you definitely do. Like, you have to be able to go in that mode. But, dude, their lifestyle is just, it's a grind. And
Yeah,
to be
dude.
surrounded by it, you can't help but like pull things from them. And
They have
it
like
elevates you.
the most discipline. They have like a really cool like calmness about them when they're not in the ring. I mean, it's wild. Did you how did you get your resume to Will and them? Did they have like a website? Like what was this type of process like?
Yeah, it was legit. You swipe up on his Instagram story and then it brings you to like, not indeed.com, but something similar.
Yeah.
And fill out like the basic questions. And then I ended up getting like, the first round interview. So for Bussin' with the Boys is a Barstool podcast, but they own all of their own, like they own their IP.
Gotcha.
So it's like they're a separate business. So I'm a Bussin' with the Boys employee, not a Barstool employee.
Okay.
But Barstool funds my salary.
All
So
right,
it's
cool.
like great setup for Will and Taylor. Um,
I didn't
but
know that. So it was a thing before Barstool and Barstool brought them on.
yeah, I think they got signed in like sometime in the mid 20s episodes. Like Vrabel came on and had a viral clip where he said he would cut his piece off for a Super Bowl. So that went bonkers. And then Jalen Ramsey came on talking about his trash talk and like how he would, I don't know if he was like DMing the sisters of the wide receivers that he was about to play against. And like, so that went viral. And then that put them on the map. And Barstool signed them like, hey, we'd love to do like a revenue share deal, we'll blast your stuff. And that was their first contract.
Okay, cool. What
Yeah.
uh what was the interview process like for Bussin' with the Boys?
Dude, it was long and it was happening all at the same time as the UFC interviews. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking, I felt like they were talking to each other where it's like, oh yeah, like UFC interview at 10 a.m. and Bussin' with the Boys at 3 p.m. And then both of them are giving me projects to do as a part of the interview. I'm like, man, I don't have time for this. And so yeah, for bar UFC, it was all the same people you talk to. And for Bussin' with the Boys, you talk to one person from Barstool first, and that's just kind of like to make sure you're not a crazy person. So once I made it through that round, thank God.
Like the initial HR interview or something.
Exactly. Like, oh, what do you do? Where do you live? What are your interests? And then I interviewed with this guy, Alex Lagos, who was with Bussin' with the Boys at the time. Now he runs like John Chris podcast. He did Ernest, and he does like a lot of different clients around Nashville. But I want to say 3 interviews with him, and like 3 interviews and 2 projects, which is time consuming because I'm
Yeah,
working
dude, that's
just
a
off.
lot already.
Bro, yeah, and I'm still having to make my own money to pay for my things like life, and so it was like draining me, and also doing the UFC projects at the same time. And I'm just like, man, I don't know if I can, I'm gonna have to just choose one that I'm gonna go all in on. Ultimately, I didn't. I still tried to do both, but I did those, and then I didn't hear back. Like, I had done 3 rounds of interviews with Bussin' With The Boys and 3 rounds with the UFC. I'm like, I gotta be close to the finish line somewhere. And both places kind of go like radio silent. Like, man, there is no way. In my head, I'm thinking I'll probably get the UFC job because all these people are vouching for me.
Hmm.
Probably won't get Bussin' With The Boys because, like, I don't like, why would I almost? And ultimately it was the reverse. I got Bussin' With The Boys, didn't get UFC, but I come to find out that the reason it was taking so long for both of these interviews was me and the same kid were in the final round for both of the jobs,
Wow.
and they both wanted him. So I was just collateral damage sitting there waiting. They're just waiting, like, well, if this guy says no to us, we'll just get JP.
Dang. Hey, it worked out, man.
Dude, it worked out because my girlfriend, she was living in Nashville. The UFC job would have been in Vegas. And ultimately, 2 or 3 months later, the UFC reaches back out and is like, hey, like we made a mistake. We want you on our team. We have a new role coming up that we'd love to offer to you if you're interested, like before we put it out there. Let us know what you think. But Bussin' With The Boys gave me my first shot. And so I remain loyal. I'm like, I at least got to see this through with them for my year-long contract. But like, please don't forget about me. I
Yeah,
love the
definitely.
UFC. And now, like, it's been nuts because now with Bussin' With The Boys, we have a relationship with the UFC. And I walked into the office 2 or 3 months ago, and like 4 people were like, JP. I'm like, no way. This is crazy.
What was the first like couple episodes? What were your first job? Because if people don't know that are listening, Bussin' With The Boys is a massive podcast, video, audio, YouTube. You can call it, I guess, Barstool podcast as well. But I mean, this thing is
Mhm.
massive. What was like, what was your realization of like, oh man, like this is big?
Yeah. So, at the time, they kind of pitched it as like, hey, you'll be leading up, like handling most of our vlogs. I'm like, okay, dope. That sounds awesome. I love like vlog style content. Super fun. Um, and my first episode was Dave Portnoy.
Wow.
Yeah, and like at the time the bus was still just in this church parking lot. I still haven't met Will or Taylor in person. I had moved to Nashville like maybe that same week. Didn't have a place to live yet. Like was still looking, stayed in the basement of a friend of a friend's, in-laws. And I show up to this rundown garage, and I meet up with some of the other production guys kind of running me through the stuff. And they're like, it's Portnoy. Well, Will had texted me a few days prior, like, hey, we're bringing in Portnoy for your first episode in person. I hope you feel special. I'm like, oh, snap. And so but it was my first time meeting Will in person, first time meeting Taylor in person. Will gets out, does his whole big dap thing. You immediately feel good. You're like, all right, cool. Like, this guy is as advertised. And then Taylor gets out of his truck, and
Massive,
Taylor's
dude.
like, dude, and he's still like in peak football shape, like had just been rehabbing and everything, and just a unit. I'm like, oh snap, this man is massive. And he, daps me up, same thing. And you're like, you're able to decompress a little bit.
Hmm.
But right when you're
Both
feeling
seem like
good,
super nice guys.
dude, yeah, they're the best. Which is like, after working with athletes, I've had a lot of great experiences with athletes, but they are, I don't know, like I don't really include the UFC guys in this because most of those guys are just like us. Like they don't make a lot of money.
Hmm.
They don't have a lot of exposure. Like they're in a very different boat than NFL players. But they're like Will and Taylor are just as corny as it is, like the boys.
Hmm.
And but right when you're getting ready to decompress, Dave Portnoy comes rolling up and you're like, oh
Oh
gosh.
shit.
Yeah, like everybody knows Dave Portnoy. And he was super, super nice. And like what I've learned about him is if you're a hard worker, he respects you,
Yeah.
which I respect about him.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for him and how he built Barstool. So
Man, it's crazy. Yeah, it's admirable. Like I don't agree with how he handles some things, but you cannot knock that dude's work ethic.
for sure.
Um, so yeah, that was like I didn't really do too much, just like taking some photos, kind of like getting taught the ropes of everything, how to act, like what to do during the podcast. I'm like not speaking, just kind of laying low, trying to figure out like how do I fit into this crew? And then it gets easier and easier over
Hmm.
time.
What behind the scenes, who's doing the booking? Who's like putting together the con or the is there a game plan for each episode? Do y'all have like an outline? Like how do y'all kind of
Yeah.
put that together?
So as far as booking goes, either Barstool handle it because they have a whole booking team handle it, and or Will and Taylor will do it. And that's the easiest way because, their
They
names in the
they got
NFL
it. Yeah.
world and they've played with all these different people. So we don't really do too much. Now, as I've gotten more involved in the role and like established myself a little bit and I have some connections from Florida or whatever, I feel more confident. If Will's like, hey, would you mind reaching out to this person? Then I'll do it sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's always Barstool or Will and Taylor. And then what was the second part of the question?
No, like for the outline, like putting
Outline.
together, the content for the show.
Yeah, that's where they're unique, dude. Like we'll give them an outline, and usually we'll definitely hit on like football headlines, and then anything once you get to know them, you figure out their sense of humor, anything you think they will find funny and could react to. But they don't really watch other sports, which is kind of tough.
Really?
Yeah, like NBA finals are going on and they haven't watched more than 5 minutes of it.
Dang, I would not have guessed that.
Dude, I'm like, you guys should probably watch this. Like, it's the sports world. You're a sports podcast. And there's not much to talk about football right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But dude, those two, they can just riff. Like
They got a
they both,
special connection. Like I don't know how they even are good friends, but I mean, honestly, they just seem like two best friends, like talking shit to each other back and forth.
yeah. And I mean, dude, it's crazy. They only met in like 2018.
It's crazy.
So it's not like they have this long history.
Do they
Um,
have a like a white whale, somebody they want to come on?
I mean, it would be Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan doesn't really go on podcasts. So
Yeah, dude.
their white whale is going on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Hey, it might happen. Is for you, you've been on there for I mean, your first one being Portnoy, and that might be the answer. You've had on what's one that sticks out or have been the coolest experience for you?
Yeah, I would say like probably there's so many that stick out and so many of them are good dudes, which says a lot about Will and Taylor. Good dudes attract good dudes. And I mean, if I had to name one, probably Pat McAfee,
Dang,
just
legend.
cuz dude, legend. And like, when I was like kicking and punting in high school, Pat McAfee's like the guy, like the
Hmm.
only cool punter to ever exist, minus Ryan Suckup, of course.
There you go.
And so like watching him as a player is cool, and then seeing him just dominate
Hmm.
the media industry.
Insane, dude. He's
And
special. He's got a special talent.
oh, dude, he's one of one. And you just hope you're like, man, I hope he is who he seems like he is.
Yep.
And sure enough, him and his crew are just awesome, bro. Like they're the best.
We were we were talking about comedians when we were texting yesterday, you got to sit down with like Bert Kreischer and like y'all were, I think y'all were in LA or something. What's Bert like in person?
Dude, Bert, the thing with Bert is
Seems like a
I love
wild
when
man.
dude, he's a wild man. And it makes so much sense when, because like a lot of these guys, you ask them about like, what's it like being famous now? Like you were once this kid that, was a nobody, and now you have all these things. And usually there's like a answer of like it's weird sometimes, it's this, that, and the other. Bert is like, man, this is what do you mean? This is the greatest thing in the world. He's like, I get to go dive, go swimming with sharks and then parachute off this and then sell out an arena and be friends with football players and be on TV. Like this is the greatest thing in the world. And it's so genuine. Like there's not an ounce of like arrogance to him at all. And just hearing like that genuine excitement to live the life he's living, it makes you happy for him, and it's
Mhm.
inspiring too. You're like, man, maybe I could like live a life similar. I don't,
You're
not
right,
everybody
dude.
has.
He just, I feel like whenever I listen to him, he lives a life of joy. He's just like embracing every moment. He's just like living life to the fullest, maybe a little bit too much with narcotics and alcohol,
Yeah,
but
dude, he has like this quote about like, because athletes can be weird about like fans a little bit, to where like like, oh, how does somebody like pour this much time into being like a fan of a team? And when Bert explains being a fan, which is like Bert is a fan of other people, like other athletes, other comedians, and he like a true fan. He's like, dude, there's nothing better than being at the airport and say you're a Cowboys fan and you go to the bar and you see somebody wearing the star and you're able to be like, hey, you see the game last weekend? He's like, being a fan like connects you to so many people. He's like, so why wouldn't I be a
mhm.
fan of all these things and people? I'm like, dude, that's a dope statement.
Yeah, it's like the community. You know what I mean? Like a community that you don't know you have, but you see somebody. I told Taylor this on the push-ups. My wife's family grew up in Michigan, and dude, it's crazy. Every day, whenever we see somebody rocking a Michigan, they'll just walk by and be like, "Go blue!" You're like, "Go blue!" All right.
It's the best, dude.
With with it moving forward, I mean, you've talked about before we got on, maybe, but possibly getting your own podcast, like doing a little tennis podcast. Like, how do you see your role? Because I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like you got that energy to be on camera more, to be doing more like media facing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. First off.
You're,
Um,
I mean, you're not, you're like, you're funny enough. Like, you got a good, like, I mean, you're obviously driven. You got a good, like, professional, mindset, but you also like can get along with people, shoot the shit with people, which I think is a lot of success now in media.
dude, yeah, I mean, if you're just not afraid to be yourself, it helps with everything. And I like so many people can get caught up in some of those things, but and it's hard. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do the stuff I'm doing now had I not been through all of those being told no. And I just like, I don't care as much what people, I never have really cared too much what people think. But after you get told no a bunch and like shot down, then you really
Mhm.
stop caring.
Yeah,
And it's
definitely.
like, it's very freeing. Um, but yeah, dude, the tennis podcast, it just seems like
Is there a tennis podcast?
there's one or two, but they're not like there's no tennis podcast where players are coming on
Hmm.
and sitting down and having conversations like they have on Bussin' With The Boys. And to me, that's like an actual tennis podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the only sport that I don't know if golf has it, but the only sport that a player doesn't have a podcast in, and it's a global sport.
I was about to
There's
say
high
the
school.
fan base is huge.
It's crazy, dude. And I mean, in America, tennis was like the sport in the 70s and 80s. And sure, we had like the best players at that time, but there's more to it than that, because present day tennis, there is high school basketball players with more of a following than the best American
Hmm.
male tennis player.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like that guy has a global audience, but there's just no camera on him. And the sport is just nuts in itself. But I think that a couple of things draw me towards it. One being the first to like ideally I would do it with a player. And so it could be an active player that gets to be in the media side because that would allow I could help him maybe transition into the next phase of
Hmm.
his life, and he could be a pioneer of tennis media because tennis media is boring right now. And two, like it would be very cool to be a part of a crew that like changes that like shifts a sport back to like what it was.
Yeah,
Football
be
and
fun too,
basketball
man. You can make it more fun.
make it more fun. And I mean, it's there. Like these players are young, and I've gotten to know some of them, and you see how they work. And it's like if people just knew their stories, they would like them just as much as they like, Jimmy Butler and like these type people.
Yeah, you got a
And
few of the tennis goats ending their career here soon. So
I know, dude. Roger Federer, I know you're watching this.
yeah, I love Nadal. That is my guy.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Nadal, it's gonna be sad next year at the French Open.
I know, man. Crazy. I can't. I mean, he kind of announced that, right? It'd be his last year.
Yeah, which is I saw a stat. This year was the first French Open that didn't have Federer or Nadal since 1998.
Insane.
Crazy, dude.
Do you
Um,
think your current role will like allow you to branch out and do some stuff like that?
yeah, I mean, like Will is uh all about like championing us. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
bro. I
Champion
got you.
plus ing at the end. We'll let the listeners enunciate that for me. Um, but like he's great about that, and he wants me to be successful in anything that I want to do, and I'm still like I very much want to like help grow the Bussin brand. And in my head, the the bigger I can say if I start a tennis podcast, that will get my name out there, and in return, that gets Bussin with the Boys
Hmm.
name out there.
Yeah, it all
And you
works
see
together.
exactly, you see it with Barstool people. They got guys that go out to the lacrosse stuff. They have the foreplay guys, and a lot of those guys are on other shows, but they focus more of their time on the lacrosse or golf,
Yep.
and that's kind of dream world. That's how I could see it going. It might not go that way in the beginning, but it might be something where I have to go build it and then I could come back maybe.
Sure.
It's ultimately it's up to Will and Taylor.
What's your current deal with them?
It's just like I'm a W-2 employee and there's no like real contract.
Got it. So initially you did have a contract and they've kind of just like
Yeah, yeah.
continued to keep
Initially,
you
I
on.
was just uh like a W had a W-9.
What do your parents think about it?
They love it, dude. My dad he's great about like taking the risk. And or you mean what do they think about me
No,
potentially?
you, dude. I know
Oh, the
you
whole
got to say,
thing.
yeah, like well, you're still young in your career. I mean, honestly, I look up to the drive you've had, like like you said, continue to drive, shake hands, reach out to people. You listen to, you get no, and you just, makes you go harder the next time.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents, dude, like my dad especially. He's just done like the best job instilling kind of like the self-belief as it's gone on cuz I watched him work and he worked a job that he didn't want. Like he's not passionate about his job. And he worked his butt off and
Mhm.
still works his butt off and he's 66 years old. And so like, as all these things get start to be like put on my mind and in my brain and I watched his work ethic, I'm like, man, he didn't work this hard for me to not like
Mhm.
he worked this hard for me to have these opportunities. And it would be a disservice to his hard work if
Sure.
I don't go after it and try to chase like my dreams. So like his work ethic and providing for our family, major inspiration in me like
Mhm.
taking these leaps of faith and moving to these places. And it's pretty nuts because one of the first places my dad moved after college was Dallas. And then the next place he moved was Clearwater, Florida, which is right near Sarasota.
Oh yeah, I know. That's where my wife's stepdad flies for the Lightning. Flies the Lightning's owner. He's a pilot, so they live in
Oh,
Clearwater.
dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like kind of, those same things, but it's like he paved a way for me to chase my passions where he had to chase,
Hmm.
providing for the family. So they think it's great, and they see the work that has gone on behind the scenes, which can be lost sometimes when it's a social media job. Like everything looks cool, but
Yep.
they don't see like
It's a
the
lot
the
of
la-
work, man.
lot of work and things you can't mess up too much. Like there's not a lot of room for error because people's careers are at stake if you do.
A little pivot here. What did the boys think about going to see Shane Beamer and Spencer Rattler and all those guys?
Dude, Will is all in on Shane Beamer.
Let's
Taylor
go,
as well,
Will.
but Will, like, I'm not want to put all the words in Will's mouth, but he, like, of all the places we've been, he's like, dude, I'm playing for Beamer. And as a Carolina fan, that fires me up.
Yeah, me too.
And dude, Beamer
I
is
got to
it.
get him on the podcast.
Dude, he's been going on a little run.
He has. I got good connections. Like I just had Pat DeMarco on. Um,
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I've had Garcia on. I had Connor Shaw on. So I just need to ask. I just haven't
DeMarco's
done the ask yet.
DeMarco's definitely the one that's like most connected with him
He
because he's with him every day.
Beamer was his recruiter back in 2007. So
He brought all the dogs.
all right. So we'll wrap it up here. What episode coming up? Like what do you and the Bussin' Boys have coming up? What should people be willing to look out for?
Yeah, the biggest stuff will be at the end of June. It's so funny because it feels like a serious like plug, like, all right, plug their some big interview, like in-depth thing. And like our biggest thing is beer Olympics at the end of the
Let's
month.
go.
And like Bert Kreischer's coming to that, Shane
Nice.
Gillis.
Dude, Shane,
Um,
man, that boy can put down some beer.
dude, him and Taylor will be a battle for the ages. And but like a bunch of guys are coming. So that will be fun. And we'll make a vlog around that, which is always ridiculous. We're gonna set up a confession corner to where they go in, halfway through the game and they're a little blitzed and they'll say what's on their mind. So we got that, and then what else we got? We're going to the NASCAR race.
Nice, dude.
Interviews, we're doing 2 stops, I think, for like NFL training camps. Um, Undecided on where we're going though.
Hey, what was it
That's
like meeting Hasbullah?
bro, my king. Um,
Dude, it's crazy.
dude, the craziest part about it, man, like in that, like Mark Wahlberg was also in that room,
He's
and
second tier, man.
second tier, dude. Like I'm telling you, Hasbullah comes walking in, the whole place is just dead silent. Dana White brings him up onto like the platform where all the slap league stuff goes on. Hasbullah's just walking around. He's looking, and the first noise out of his mouth, he said, does his little high pitched whistle, and his translator comes over. Like, there's no shot, man. And Mark Wahlberg even said, he was like, I've never been around somebody with this aura of
Wow.
like fame. Like, dang, dude. And he was like almost starstruck by him as well.
Dang. Have you met Caleb Presley yet?
Yeah, I've met Caleb a couple of times. He lived in Nashville for a little bit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Dude,
He had
that
Hasbullah on Sunday Conversation.
so funny too. But yeah, Caleb is an incredible creative mind.
He really
Like
is. Yeah. Special.
you're talking with him and you're just like, man, I wonder what, like, is he
What's
like
going through his
taking
head
something
right
I
now?
said and turning it into a Sunday conversation right now?
Well,
But
JP, man, thank you for coming on. For real. I mean, your grind is inspiring. Like I mean, you got a nonstop, motivation and grind and chip on your shoulder. And I think that's something I can look up to. A lot of people can look up to if you keep it on there. I mean, nothing but success is coming your way, dude.
thanks, bro. And dude, For real. Thanks for having me on. Cause like I legit have known about your podcast since the beginning. And I'm a big Greenville guy. So in my like little I tweeted out something the other day saying one of my goals is to throw out the first pitch at a Greenville Drive game.
Nice.
Also, one of the many goals is to come on this podcast. So
Hey, thank
I
you for coming
appreciate
on,
it.
brother.
And I'm excited for everything that you have
For sure.
coming up for you. I know it'll be big.
Hey, one day maybe we'll be both on the mound over in the Drive Stadium throwing out the first pitch.
You pitching, I'm catching.
All right, let's do
Pause,
it.
pause, 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 pause.
Throw it out, throw it out. Hey man, thank you, JP.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, we're done.